is the most tellurium I've ever had in my hands at once.
That is unbelievably rich.
Welcome back to High Country Gold and Silver. Today is one of those once-in-a-season videos because I recently gained special access to the absolute best of the high-grade specimens that Jason, Harry, and the Mount Baker Mining and Metals crew pulled out of Jason's gold mine in 2025. And I do not mean nice ore or good gold in quartz. I mean the richest part of the pocket, the nerve center of the vein, where the system stops whispering and starts shouting. If you love visible gold, this is the episode. If you love the weird chemistry that makes gold travel with tellurium and bismuth, this is the episode. And if you love that moment when a vein reopens, fluids surge through, and nature concentrates a fortune into a space the size of a backpack. This is exactly what we are looking at in this episode. I am going to walk you through every one of these named pieces, explain what you are seeing, and tie it back to why the Mount Baker district is famous. So if you enjoy ore specimens, mining history, and the science behind bonanza pockets, hit like, subscribe to High Country Gold and Silver, and ring the notification bell.
He's about to remove it, and we're about to see what is going on.
These are gold specimens in quartz, loaded with bismuth tellurides from the tetradymite group, and in this setting, there may also be gold tellurides riding along with the native gold. That combination is a big deal. It is not just gold in quartz, it is gold with an unusual chemical signature that often tracks the hottest, richest pulse of a system. Every one of these pieces comes from an undisclosed mine in the Mount Baker district, Whatcom County, Washington, in the North Cascades. Same pocket, same year, mined in 2025 by Mount Baker Mining and Metals. Let's get this on the map. We'll start by zooming into the United States and then tightening down onto Washington State in the Pacific Northwest, in the far northwestern corner of the lower 48. Zooming in closer, we're looking at the North Cascades, that rugged wall of mountains that rises fast out of the lowlands and runs north toward British Columbia. This is steep, glaciated country, sharp ridgelines, avalanche chutes, cirques, and short summers where access can be measured in weeks, not months. It is the kind of terrain where mining is road building, snow management, water management, ventilation, and doing everything on a slope. Now, I am keeping the mine name undisclosed for the same reason we did in the Crown Jewel video. So we are going to talk real geology and real district context, but we are not putting a pin on the exact spot. What matters for today is that this is classic North Cascades vein country. Hard rocks, big structures, and a quartz vein system that can go from ordinary to outrageous when you hit the right reopened zone. Okay, let's start with Slabzilla, because this piece sets the tone for the whole pocket. Slabzilla is 18.9 by 7.2 by 5 centimeters, and it weighs 1,269 grams. It is a big, confident slab of vein material, and the first thing you notice is that it reads like a cross-section through the vein's internal life. You have milky, blocky quartz that looks like it grew in a tight fracture, and across the upper portion, you have a broad zone of grey, metallic-looking material that breaks the whiteness like a storm front. That grey is exactly where you expect the bismuth tellurides to show. Steel grey to silver grey, often platy and reflective, sitting tight to the richest pulse. On Slabzilla, the gold is not one single isolated nugget. Instead, it appears as multiple bright flecks and leaf-like flashes scattered along that grey boundary and along subtle fractures that cut across the quartz. That is important. That distribution is classic for gold painted into reactivated pathways. The slab face also has those faint linear saw marks that suggest it was cut by Harry and Jason, and that is actually a gif out of the viewer. A prepared surface makes texture pop. You can see the difference between earlier, more massive quartz and later, more broken, recemented material. Slabzilla is the kind of piece that lets you point at the rock and say, "This is the vein plumbing." Now let's move to the piece that sounds like it came out of the core of the storm. Heart of the pocket is 9.7 by 7.4 by 7.2 centimeters, and it weighs 566 grams. And you can tell immediately why it earned that name. One face shows a strong contrast between milky quartz and darker metallic-looking seams and patches that sit right where the pocket's richest flow pathways would be. On the other face, you can see more of the iron-stained rind and the way the mineralized zone hugs a boundary inside the quartz. The gold on this piece presents as sharp, bright points that catch light quickly, and when gold is that flashy on rotation, it is often sitting on small fracture surfaces or in microvugs rather than being deeply buried. What I love about Heart of the Pocket is that it looks like it came from a zone where the vein opened enough to create real space, but not so much space that everything grew as large, clean crystals. Instead, it looks like a dynamic zone, broken, healed, and mineralized impulses. That is exactly what a pocket heart is. It is not just a void. It is a repeated event horizon where movement and fluids met again and again. All right, now we lean into the vein chemistry with tellurium delirium. Tellurium delirium is 17.7 by 9.9 by 5.4 centimeters, and it weighs 868 grams. This piece has a bold two-tone personality. One side is dominated by a broad grey metallic mass that looks like it has a sugary sparkle in places, and the other side transitions into a lighter, more quartz-rich zone. This is the kind of piece that makes collectors say, "That is not just sulfides," because it does not look brassy like pyrite or chalcopyrite. It reads as steel grey and silvered, with a platy shimmer that can be very characteristic of telluride-rich zones. And the gold on this specimen shows as those bright yellow flashes perched along the transition between the grey mineralized zone and the quartz. That boundary is everything. That boundary is where permeability and chemistry often intersect. The grey zone likely represents a concentrated ore pulse, and the gold is riding along the edges and within the healed fractures that fed that pulse. Tellurium delirium is also the specimen that makes the "Why Tellurium Matters" point better than any lecture. Tellurium-bearing gold systems are often the systems that create sudden, localized enrichment. They can take gold that is otherwise dispersed and concentrate it along very specific events. So when you hold a specimen like this, you are holding the chemical fingerprint of a special moment in the hydrothermal story. Now we go from chemistry to geometry with half and half. Half and half is 16.3 by 9.1 by 5.8 centimeters, and it weighs 581 grams. And visually, this piece really does feel divided. One portion is dominated by warm, iron-stained quartz, and the other portion shifts to a lighter, cleaner look, with scattered dark flecks and subtle, mineralized seams. The gold here is more discreet, showing as small, bright points rather than large masses. But that is not a weakness. It is telling you that this specimen is showing something else, a boundary condition. Pieces like half and half are incredibly important for understanding pockets, because pockets often form where something changes. A change in rock competency, a change in fracture density, a change in the way a fault jogs, a change in permeability. The name fits because the specimen looks like it captures a transition zone inside the vein system. The iron staining suggests oxidation along microfractures and older surfaces, and that helps you read the internal architecture, where fluids once moved, where later water moved, where the rock opened and breathed. And if you are a collector who likes reference pieces, half and half is a reference piece for contact and transition. It is the kind of specimen you can use to explain why the pocket did not just spread everywhere. The pocket concentrated where the system had the best trap. And this looks like a piece cut from the margin where conditions were changing. Now we go back to the slab story with Son of Slabzilla. Son of Slabzilla is 17.7 by 6 by 1 centimeters, and it weighs 241 grams. This piece is thin, blade-like, and it preserves that same page torn from the vein feeling as its larger parent. The surface shows a broad sweep of pale quartz with a grey mineralized band toward the top, and scattered gold flecks that look like tiny leaf fragments embedded along subtle fracture lines. Because it is cut thin, Son of Slabzilla is a perfect specimen for understanding how vein material separates along internal planes. In a dynamic vein system, repeated movement can create natural splitting surfaces. A crack opens along a previous seam, or a brecciated band forms a plane of weakness, and later the vein breaks along that plane. When you cut a thin slab like this from pocket material, it often means you are seeing one of those internal seams that carried a lot of fluid. And the gold showing as discrete specks and tiny leaves is exactly what you expect when gold is deposited on microsurfaces in a reopened pathway. Son of Slabzilla also makes a practical collector point. Not every legendary pocket produces only giant boulders. Pockets produce sweets, thick chunks, thin plates, edge pieces, centerpieces, and everything in between. And sometimes the thin plates are the ones that show the best map of the mineralization across the surface. Alright, now we arrive at the name everyone wants to hear in a pocket suite. Biggest gold is 9.7 by 6.1 by 6.3 centimeters, and it weighs 519 grams. Right near the top of the specimen, along a grey metallic seam, you have bright yellow native gold showing as thick leaf-like patches and irregular blebs. It is not a timid dusting. It is the kind of gold that pops even when you are not trying to make it pop. This is what I mean when I say free gold. Free gold is gold that is sitting in the open, not locked invisibly in other minerals. And in a pocket, Free gold like this usually forms where there was real space, or where fracture surfaces stayed open long enough for gold to build thickness. The quartz around it is milky and massive, but that upper seam looks like the main fluid highway. You can almost read it like a horizon. Quartz below or seam above, with gold concentrated right where that seam had the best combination of flow and deposition trigger. And that trigger can be a lot of things, but in pockets, the big ones are sudden pressure drops and boiling. When a fracture opens in a hot hydrothermal system, pressure can drop fast. Fluids can flash and change chemistry immediately. Gold, which can travel as dissolved complexes, suddenly loses its ability to stay dissolved, and it precipitates. If tellurium and bismuth are present, you can also form those telluride phases right alongside the gold, and they can be intimately intergrown. Biggest gold looks like a frozen moment of that exact process. Now we go from biggest gold to biggest mass with Constellation Rock. Constellation Rock is 11.3 by 11.7 by 11 centimeters, and it weighs 2,206 grams. This is the heavyweight of the suite. Over 2 kilograms of high-grade pocket material. And the name is perfect, because the gold is distributed like points of light across a field. On the broad face, you see warm orange-brown iron staining sweeping across the quartz, and scattered dark flecks and seams that mark where mineralization traveled. Then, in multiple spots, you catch those bright yellow points of gold, like stars embedded across the surface. Constellation Rock reads like the pocket in 3 dimensions. It looks like a chunk that preserves the internal topography of the vein. Irregular surfaces, healed cracks, subtle shifts in color and texture, and multiple places where the system found a pathway. It is not one continuous gold sheet. It is a map of multiple depositional sites. And from a geology standpoint, that is incredibly informative. It suggests the pocket was not a single open cavity where gold settled like sediment. It suggests a complex crackle zone where multiple micro-openings and sealed fractures created a network. In a network like that, gold can be deposited in many small sites, and the best sites can be clustered where the permeability was highest. This is also where the Telluride story likely plays a role. In many deposits, bismuth tellurides of the tetradymite group show up as part of a specific high-grade stage. When you see a specimen that has multiple mineralized seams and scattered gold points, you're often looking at the product of repeated pulses. Constellation Rock feels like it captures that repetition. It is the pocket's big picture specimen. And now we finish with a piece whose label is basically a grin. No comment is 10 by 6.7 by 7.2 centimeters, and it weighs 531 grams. Compact, confident chunk with a strong band of reddish iron staining across the upper portion, a grey mineralized seam beneath it, and milky quartz making up the body of the piece. There is a small, bright metallic flash near the mineralized band, and the whole specimen looks like a clean slice out of a very specific zone inside the pocket. The reason a name like No Comment works is because it implies that the rock is self-explanatory. It is the kind of piece you show someone, and they immediately understand the story. White quartz vein, grey ore seam, and visible gold associated with the richest horizon. There is no need to oversell it. the rock is doing the talking. And in the context of this suite, no comment is a great closer because it brings you right back to the pocket concept. The pocket is not everywhere. The pocket is a specific horizon, a specific set of seams, a specific zone where structure and chemistry aligned. No comment looks like a specimen cut right out of that alignment zone, where the iron staining highlights the pathways and the grey seam marks the ore pulse. Now, stepping back from the individual pieces, let me tie the entire suite into one clean geological story you can carry forward, because this is the educational payoff. In the Mount Baker district, gold mineralization is strongly vein-controlled. Quartz fissure veins cut through metamorphic host rocks, and those veins can experience multiple episodes of opening, sealing, and reactivation. When a vein is reactivated, the earlier quartz can be mechanically broken into micro-breccia, and the broken zone becomes permeable again. Later, hydrothermal pulses can then move through that broken zone, and when pressure drops, temperature changes, fluids mix, or boiling occurs, gold can precipitate rapidly. That is how you get pocket-grade enrichment. Now add tellurium and bismuth to that picture. Bismuth tellurides of the tetradymite group are common in certain gold systems, and they are frequently associated with high-grade stages. In some modern research, bismuth and tellurium-rich phases are discussed as efficient scavengers of gold, meaning they can help concentrate gold and localize it into small zones. You do not need to take a position on every detail of that model to appreciate the big message. When you see gold with bismuth tellurides, you are often looking at a focused, high-grade event with distinctive chemistry. And that is why this suite feels like a coherent nerve center set. Slabzilla and Son of Slabzilla show the veins' internal planes and the way mineralization rides along seams. Heart of the Pocket and No Comment show the pocket horizon as a boundary zone where mineralization is concentrated. Tellurium Delirium shows the chemical fingerprint of the telluride-rich pulse. Biggest Gold shows what happens when the system has space and the trigger is strong enough to build thick free gold. And Constellation Rock shows the three-dimensional network nature of the pocket, where multiple microsites of deposition light up across one massive chunk. From a collector standpoint, this is exactly what you want from a famous pocket. You want variety that still tells one story. You want pieces that show gold loudly, and pieces that show the textures that created the gold. You want a suite that you could put in a display case and use to teach an entire class about vein reactivation, permeability, depositional triggers, and why pockets exist at all. And I want to emphasize one more point, because it matters to anyone who collects locality material: provenance. These were mined and prepared in 2025 by Mount Baker Mining and Metals from a documented modern operation in one of Washington's classic alpine gold districts. That matters. It means these are not anonymous market rocks. They are time-stamped pieces from a specific moment in the life of a mine and a pocket. That is the kind of context that elevates ore from cool to historic. Alright, let's wrap this up. Now I want to hear from you. Which specimen would you pick if you could only take one home? The architectural story in Slabzilla, the chemistry-heavy drama of tellurium delirium, the concentrated intensity of Heart of the Pocket, the straight-up swagger of Biggest Gold, the three-dimensional map of Constellation Rock, or the mic-drop simplicity of No Comment. Drop your pick in the comments and tell me what you saw that made it your favorite. If you enjoyed this deep dive into a true pocket sweep, please like the video, subscribe to High Country Gold and Silver, and ring the notification bell. And if you haven't already subscribed to Mount Baker Mining and Metals and Mine Operator, then follow the links in the description and watch the actual moment these amazing pieces were extracted from the mine wall. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.